Hi guys, and welcome back to episode 4 of The Result Show.
Indeed.
I'm here with David Shepherd, and we are continuing our journey into NLP, what it can do for us in our personal and our professional lives, and also to have a look at how we can supplement it with existing technologies. So it's almost like it's a tool that we can then add other things to. And then basically find out how to use it to create a life of abundance and happiness. I think that's kind of it in a nutshell, really, isn't it?
That's what the results show is all about.
Yes, so getting the results that we want. So in this episode, we are diving into an area that is close to everybody's hearts because it's the area of family.
Right.
So there are obviously certain bits that we've been talking about in terms of, work or career, or, even we're going to be doing intimate relationships in the next episode.
Hot potato.
Yes. But one that's guaranteed to get listeners to tune in to see exactly what we're going to be saying, just in case there's any secret bedroom techniques. But one thing that most people do have, regardless of whether you've got a job or a significant other, is a family. So, and also, whereas you have a lot of flexibility in terms of job and significant others, family is slightly harder to upgrade, isn't it?
Yeah, and by the very nature of the territory, there are going to be times of conflict.
Yes.
I think, no matter how much NLP you know, no matter how much HUNA you know, no matter how much personal development you do, there are going to be times in your family life where there's going to be fallouts.
Yes.
So it's not really about how do we avoid that. It's more about what do we do.
And I think that's an important point.
When it happens.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, isn't it? Because you get it's like couples who say, oh, we've never had an argument. It's like, okay, in that case, you are, and obviously we're going to be covering intimate relationships in the next one, but there is, I guess it holds true that, kind of like arguments and disagreements and stuff like that are a natural part of life. If they're not there, it's almost like when the volcano stops steaming because it's about to blow. So it's saying these sorts of things are going to happen. They're not necessarily a bad thing because it's just the interaction of people. But what we do want to be able to do is to manage our own state and, kind of like help other people manage theirs, but possibly without looking like that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's the, manage your own state. Obviously, NLP has lots of state management techniques. I think the thing really that causes this almost like potentially volcanic eruption in family life is people having unresolved negative emotions.
Yes.
Events in the past, which could be a long time ago in the past, that still have them get angry or still have them feel sad or still have them feel afraid or hurt or feel guilty.
Because the subconscious isn't really conscious of time, is it? So it's like...
No, I mean, the unconscious mind is obviously the storehouse of all of our memories.
Yes.
And paradoxically, the unconscious mind is always in now.
Yes.
So I think we've all had the experience where something's happened that's triggered a memory coming up from the past, maybe, the distant past, which has emotion connected to it. And not necessarily only negative. I mean, it could be positive. I've got a great example of that is that, my mum and dad never smoked. Nobody was allowed to smoke in our house when I was a kid. Both of my uncles, my Uncle Dave and my Uncle Martin, smoked. So when they came to visit, they would have to go and stand out by the back door to have a cigarette. At Christmas, they would smoke cigars. And obviously, the smell of cigar smoke carries away more than cigarette smoke, So I'd be in the house, Christmas, opening my presents. I remember a Philips electronic set.
Oh, I loved those.
Which must have been when I was about 7, I think. 7 or 8 was that. That was my.
Yeah,
that was my.
We were talking about that last night, weren't we?
Yeah,
with the germanium diode.
That's right.
Yes,
yeah. And the cards and the springs.
Springs, like, yeah, put the wires into it, yeah.
And so I'm massively excited about that, childhood Christmas. And your unconscious mind, your neurology, makes associations. So, you're feeling excited. Your nervous system's going around going like, okay, what's this excitement about? What is unique from a sensory point of view? And the thing that was unique was obviously the smell of cigars. So, that was 7, now I'm 61. So what's that, like 54 years, something like that. Still to this day, when I smell cigar smoke, I get the excitement of a 7-year-old on Christmas morning.
Yes.
Comes up as quickly as that.
And because the smell is one of the senses that's most closely linked to memory, isn't it?
Smell, actually, out of all of the senses, is neurologically different in that it's more directly wired into the brain than sight, hearing, touch, taste. I guess from a evolutionary point of view, smell was what kept us alive.
Yes. Because in terms of like bonding with parents, or indeed working out what is not good or bad. Because especially with babies, it's like the eyesight that doesn't actually develop for quite some time. So it's almost like, with the exception of sound, the only input that they've got to work with.
And, cigar smoke, boom, I'm a 7-year-old. Christmas. So that's the way that our unconscious mind works. So equally, if somebody has events in the past which has got negative emotions attached to it, so even things that might be from the distant past, that when the memory comes up, the person still feels angry, sad, afraid, or hurt, or guilt, then those emotions go up, just like they were there at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing that happens in families, because, of course, these are the people that were around when we were little. So there will be those kind of like links. There will be those associations. So, it's possible for a family member to trigger something from when you were 7 years old, even though you're 61, and you respond like you did when you were 7 years old.
Yes.
Doesn't make sense. It's not logical, rational, and sensible. And that's the way that it makes you feel. So where NLP and particularly timeline therapy come in. NLP, great for in the moment, as you mentioned, state management.
Yeah.
An emotion comes up, you don't have time to do timeline therapy with yourself. Right, what do? Change your state. And one of the quickest ways from an NLP point of view of changing your state is to change your physiology.
Yes.
And the one thing out of physiology that changes your state more rapidly than anything else is to change your breathing. Yeah. So that's how you would use NLP in the moment to manage your state. Then in comes timeline therapy, because timeline therapy enables us to release those negative emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt from memories, from events in the past.
Yes.
So that there's nothing there to get triggered.
I guess would it be true to say that it's almost like, if you imagine like your memory is a Polaroid photo, what you then got is a post-it note on there with like a smiley face or an angry face or something. And what we're basically doing is saying, right, well, the memory doesn't go away, so it's not like you're going to forget that you ever had that. What we're going to do is actually going to peel off or replace the post-it note which is stuck to that Polaroid.
Exactly. We can't change the past. What happened, happened. And, that isn't actually the problem. The problem is, as you quite rightly say, is the emotion that's attached to that event. And what timeline therapy enables us to do is to take off the post-it note, unhook the emotion. So then, the memory comes up. It happened, right? But there's no longer any negative emotion associated to it, which means then those things in your family life don't trigger you anymore because there's nothing to trigger.
Yeah.
The memory might come up, but there's no emotion associated to it, which enables you to become, I guess, emotionally balanced.
Yeah.
And that those memories are there, they happen, but they're flat.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because with a lot of family, and again, because, A, you can't choose them, and B, for a lot of time with the family, and obviously it depends on where the family is and how spread out it is, but you are in close proximity to these folks. And so what happens is, because you've then got these memories, then the response, and you'll see it like two people make a comment or something, and the response is not proportionate to what was said or what happened. And the reason being is you've got all this pent up stuff, which is just basically waiting to be ignited.
Yeah.
So, and we'll know this, you'll probably, if you don't, then you're very, very lucky, but you will have people in your family where, if there's like a wedding or stuff like that, it's either, well, we can't have both of those people coming, or if we do, for God's sake, don't sit them next to each other.
Don't put them on the same table.
Yes.
And, timeline therapy particularly enables, it's like pressing the reset button.
Yeah.
I think everybody's had the experience of somebody saying something and the other people around go like, oh, fuck. Light blue touch paper, stand well back.
I don't believe you wanted to do that.
I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah.
So timeline therapy enables us to press the reset button.
Yes.
So there's nothing there to ignite.
Yeah.
So the person says something and you go, interesting.
Yes.
And that's it.
When we were discussing, because we do actually sit down and plan these episodes out. I know it may not occasionally look like that. When we're sitting down and planning this episode, one of the things that you said would be useful for these guys to know about is the Satir categories.
Yeah. So Virginia Satir was one of the three kind of like so-called wizards.
Yes.
That Bandler and Grinder modelled. The others being Fritz Perl and Milton Erickson. Virginia Satir is the only person really that they got to spend any physical face-to-face time with.
Yeah.
And she was a family therapist. And what she'd noticed was that there were 5 archetypal physiologies.
Yes.
Postures, gestures.
Just a note for those of you listening on the podcast, for those of you guys watching, you're going to be able to see this. For those of you listening on the podcast, I should describe what David does.
Okay. So these 5 archetypal physiologies, which we use and teach on things like presenting magically and on NLP trainers training, because they're like 5 archetypal installed triggers,
yes,
if you like, which, having taught people from pretty much every country around the world, when I say they're archetypal, they are universal, as in they evoke or invoke the same response wherever you are in the world.
And that's actually quite rare, isn't it? Because there's so much cultural differences. But for these things, so it sounds like it's based on some sort of deep wiring within us, rather than a cultural norm.
Yeah, like pre-installed.
Yes.
So one of them is called computer, which is like the hand on chin,
yes,
arms folded, like this, the great thinker.
Yes. So David's basically got his arms folded. He's got his left hand up his chin. He's stroking it and pondering the infinite.
Yeah. And this is your archetypal university professor.
Yes.
What I am telling you is totally logical, rational, sensible. I am above emotion. And the last time I made a mistake in the data was in around about 1959.
Yes.
So very logical, rational, sensible, above emotion, above kind of like values. It's like, it's Star Trek fans, it would be Data in Star Trek.
Yes. Does that make sense? Spock, would you say?
Possibly Spock, yeah. In The Matrix, it's Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Yep.
You are a virus.
Quite, yeah. Then you've got Placator, which is palms face upwards.
Yes.
Fingers open in a upwards and outwards movement, which basically communicates unconsciously. I want to please you.
Yes.
Just it's the ultimate yes man.
For those of you at home, David currently looks like a waiter who's emerged from the kitchen, but has forgotten the plates he's meant to be carrying.
And it's like, just tell me what you want me to do.
Yes.
And I will do anything. From what was the movie? Oliver. Oliver's down on one knee, hands up. More soup, Mr. Bumble, I think was the
yes
was the thing.
I suppose from a physiological, it's almost basically it's like submission.
Yes.
It's I am carrying no weapon. I'm unarmed.
Yeah.
So
then you've got blamer, which is like the person leans forward, they're pointing at somebody, and they're going, "This is your fault."
For those of you at home, David is doing a passable impression of the Kitchener "Your country needs you" impression.
Yeah. Voice very high up in the throat, high-pitched, loud, quick.
Unpleasant, in a word.
Blaming. What is on the opposite end of blamer is distractor. Distractor basically goes, it wasn't me.
Yes.
Nobody saw me do it. Nobody can prove I did it.
David is currently, he's got one hand up high, one hand down low in a kind of ta-da.
Complete asymmetry.
Yes.
Yeah. And it does what it says on the tin. It's designed to distract. So you would see in a family situation, communication situation, one person would adopt the blamer physiology. The person on the receiving end of the blamer physiology would do distractor.
It almost sounds like a game of rock, paper, scissors.
It is in a way, yeah. And then the final one is leveler. Now, leveler is palms face down, fingers together, almost as if there's a shelf in front of the person or a table in front of the person, and they put their hands down on the table,
yes,
and then move their hands slowly out, downwards and outwards.
Yeah, almost like you're smoothing out a piece of paper or something.
And also, the voice would be a little bit quieter. It would be with the command tonality, where the pitch goes down at the end of the sentence. And it's kind of like, okay, let me level with you. Let me tell you the truth. Let me tell you what's actually going on here. Now, Virginia Satir believed that the only person that was congruent, as in, what they were communicating with their voice, what they were communicating with their physiology, was the same, was the person who communicated out of leveler. anybody who communicates out of computer, distractor, placator, blamer, were in some way, shape, or form incongruent. So when she was working with what she would call a dysfunctional family, she knew when her work was done, when everybody in the family communicated out of leveler.
That must be quite odd. If you walk around, because especially with say smaller children, it just looks like you're in a household of politicians or something.
Yeah. So little kids go like, "No, mummy." Let me tell you the way things are around here.
That's a very interesting request for a bath mummy. I couldn't possibly comment at this time.
Yeah. Because it's kind of like, okay, let me tell you the way things work around here. Mm. And the way things work around here is we do it my way or we don't do it at all.
So what happens when you have two levelers or three levelers, one of whom wants to go to the zoo, one of whom wants to go shopping? So and again, I'm certainly not knocking Virginia Satir, but I'm just curious to know if everybody's working on that stance, do they all just stand there like the Zacks from Dr. Seuss?
You go,
build a motorway over
I want to go to the zoo. Go on then.
Okay, that makes sense. So what actually happens is everybody just goes their own way.
I want to go shopping. Go on then.
Bye.
Bit of a problem. You're 7 years old and you can't drive.
I understand what you're saying. I have strap boxes to my feet, and it's your insurance, not mine.
Yeah. So that's the kind of like you do see that, and there's a relationship between preferred representational system. Mm-hmm. Whether people prefer to think in pictures, sounds, feelings, or logic, rationality, and sense. And the representational system that goes with distractor is auditory.
Yes.
So somebody who has got a preferred representational system of auditory, the worst thing that they can hear is two people having an argument. Mm. So what they do completely instinctively is they'll come into the middle of the argument and do distractor.
Right.
So there's these two people, probably both going out of blamer.
Yeah.
And the person who's got the preferred representational system of auditory hates the sound of these two people arguing. So I'll walk in the middle, do the asymmetrical gesture, and go, does anybody want a cup of coffee? And the other people, what the fuck?
Yes.
But the idea is that it distracts the argument.
It's almost like a state shift, isn't it? It's like, because I've heard that Darren Brown was describing something whereby there was this guy spawning for a fight, and then Darren Brown walked up to him and basically said, "My neighbour's wall seems to have like one less row of bricks in it than mine.
Total distraction.
Why is that?" And apparently the guy just sat down in the gutter staring.
Yeah. So that's distractor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the person who communicates out of distractor, some people communicate out of there was the guy, scientific guy, when I was a kid, was it Magnus Pike?
Oh God, yes.
Who was just
there's
flailed around left,
yes.
right, and centre,
like great egg race and stuff.
And
like that.
you go like, okay, well he seems like a fun guy, or maybe some other kind of mushroom. And then seems to be making sense, but afterwards you go like, actually he was talking complete bollocks.
If you are listening, Mr. Pine from Beyond the Grey, then but yeah.
So that's the physiology of, it's the physiology of communication in general, but certainly the physiology and where they were first identified by Virginia Satir was in dysfunctional families.
That makes sense. I think it's time to wrap this episode up, and then because I'm sure that you guys at home can't wait for us to start to get onto the subject of intimate relationships.
Oh, right.
So we will come back to you in the next episode. Meantime, if you've got any comments or questions, then please drop them to
TheResultsShow.com.
podcast@. And we will see you next time.
You know it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.